Hello, everyone. I think we are live. Let me just make sure really quick. How is everyone doing? How are you feeling with this upcoming new moon? I'm feeling pretty ready for renewal, I would say. So, we're going to talk about what Scorpio is. We're going to talk about some of the constellation alignments that we have with this moon that I think are really, really relevant and important. Okay. The energy is interesting for sure. I think that we reached kind of a peak of energy on Samhain, on Halloween, and I do think, looking at the astrology as well, that whatever was opened is closed now. Like, there's definitely still spirits wandering, I guess is a nice way to put it. But I do think that, is this working okay? Can someone comment? All right. This should be good. And also, if you have your chart on hand, I strongly recommend having your charts because we will look at where exactly this new moon is happening so you can get a better idea of what aspects of your life this will apply to. And that's really important too. It's not the most important thing as far as like houses go, but if you have planets that are, for example, squaring Scorpio, that's going to be really, really important. The houses don't matter as much, but I do like to use them just because they create like another level of understanding and a deeper meaning, but they're not necessary at all. My teacher, Rick, always says that if there was one perfect type of astrology, like housing system, there wouldn't be like 45 different ones, basically. Okay, so everything is good. Yay. All right, so let's start with the basics. Okay. So I'm going to move this. It's going to look really weird for a second. Okay. So here is what I posted in the thumbnail. So this is pretty much like the overall what we're going to talk about, the cosmic weaver of destiny. That's not something I just made up. Just so you know, this new moon actually is aligning literally perfectly, like it is exactly aligned, I don't know what the orb is on that, with a constellation called the Northern Crown constellation, and that particular constellation is associated with all kinds of deities all across different cultures. But what I wanted to focus on was one Welsh goddess in particular who is seen as literally a cosmic weaver of destiny. She is definitely related to creation myths that maybe have been lost over time, and she's just really, really strong, like in the energy of this new moon. So I think it's super important. We'll talk about death, resurrection, renewal, of course, because this is Scorpio. And Black Moon Lilith is actually perfectly conjunct Persephone. And when I say perfectly, I mean like 0 degrees, 0 minutes conjunct Persephone. And I'm like, wow. That is like perfect timing, honestly, with Scorpio energy. Persephone being the goddess of the underworld, she spends half of her time above the underworld on Earth to create spring and to create flowers, and then she spends the other half of the year in the underworld with Hades, and everything dies. That's kind of like how, that's like a really, really general basic idea of how the story goes. The Northern Crown constellation, facing the dark goddess as we descend into the underworld. That's obviously a theme with Scorpio in general too, but because we have so much other pointers to the dark goddess, what is the dark goddess? The dark goddess is basically our dark self. It's the part of us that the dark goddess in particular sees us for exactly what we are. Like, we can't hide anything from the dark goddess. It definitely gives me Scorpio energy for sure. Seeing into the dark, like an owl, which is actually one of this Welsh goddess. That's one of her symbols, is the owl. Seeing into the dark, seeing the shadows, seeing the decay, the spiritual decay, the trauma, the rot, the things that we don't want to face about ourselves. That's kind of where I'm coming from with that. So let's talk about Scorpio energy first. Just double checking that you can see everything. Okay, so Scorpio. So look in your chart. Where is Scorpio? What planets do you have in Scorpio? What points, what houses are ruled by Scorpio? Even if like one of your houses is ruled just like a little bit by Scorpio, it's still relevant, especially if you have like certain points there. And this is going to tell you where basically in your life you're going to have to let go. You're going to have to transmute, transform something, but like a total transformation. Like when we go through this time of the year, it doesn't matter which hemisphere you're in, there is like a letting go process because we're shifting from one time of the year to another. So if you're in the southern hemisphere, you're moving into spring right now, but that is still a very chaotic time, you know. And same as we move into winter up here. There's a lot of chaos going on. We have to let go of something that we've been hanging on to. It's kind of easier to recognize, I think, when we're moving from fall into winter because it just feels like dead weight. And that's what Scorpio can't help but want to destroy, is that dead weight or things that we've been hanging on to and we don't want to heal. So Scorpio is basically, at the most basic level, the bringer of death. I know that sounds really dramatic, but that's really what Scorpio is. Scorpio brings death. Scorpio brings change. It's not like Aquarius and Uranian change. It's like, here's the apocalypse, destroy everything, everyone we once knew, destroy who we used to be so that we can be reborn from the ashes. So it's an intense energy. Everyone has like this obsession with Scorpio placement people because they're very magnetic and mesmerizing, and there's just something very like mysterious about them that draws people in, and it's kind of interesting because they're being drawn into a trap basically when it comes to Scorpio, because Scorpio is gonna push you to change everything, or to face all the things that you just don't want to look at, you know, your shadow self. Just they're kind of like the mirror, but the mirror of your darkness, the mirror of your worst traumas possible. Like, they can intuitively feel that. Even Scorpios who aren't super maybe aware of their intuition or like their psychic powers, they still do it. They still can't help but like feel around in the darkness, and they have this like very otherworldly metaphysical ability to like find the wound and like push it to the surface and almost like embody that wound so that you can face it. And they will absolutely use that against you too. Because they know what your weaknesses are. They're ruled by Pluto, the underworld, and they're ruled by Mars, which is the soldier, the martial soldier, the warrior. So it's definitely a healer energy, but it's like that one healer that you got to be really strong and brave to face that type of healer. You have to be willing to look at yourself. You can't be around a Scorpio person if you don't want to see like the cold, ugly truth, because they're for sure going to tell it to you, especially if they're in a bad mood. They're going to tell you what that truth is, and you can either face it or not face it. And I think that's why Scorpios too, they hate lying so much and they need honesty, because they already know what the truth is. Like, they know what you're hiding. They know what you're doing, what you're feeling. Yeah. Okay. So Scorpio is ruled by both Mars and Pluto. Mars would be in ancient astrology and Pluto in modern. But I 110% think that they are co-ruled, each sign. I don't think we lose the old rulership as we discovered more planets. There's definitely the energy of both. It's so obvious to me to see like the Scorpio Mars energy. Like, they're so martial. They're so warrior-like, resourceful and resilient. They're like the seasoned veteran. They've been there, done that. They've been through, you know, one too many wars probably. So you can't lie to them. They're always like strategizing, you know, in the dark. They're very strategic. They're very almost like sneaky too, because they're always looking in your darkness to see like what's going on. Like, what are your weaknesses? What are you feeling? And it's almost like they know like too much. Like, they have like X-ray vision. The mode is fixed. They are fixed water. And they are a feminine sign, which is a very weird combination. Fixed meaning like stubborn, like whatever they're feeling, water, they're stuck in that feeling, good or bad. There's no in between. It's going to be a really good or like really bad probably. And they're feminine, so that energy is brought internally. So while the other Mars or the Mars sign, Aries, is like the external fighting, with Scorpio, it's like being at war with yourself, fighting with yourself internally all the time. And their symbols are, they actually have three symbols: the scorpion, the eagle, and the dove. So they're really the archetype of the spiritual surgeon, which means Scorpio, or if you have Scorpio placements in your chart, basically they're meant to trigger you, like I said. They're going to feel for that wound. They're going to use the Mars weapon, whatever it is, sword, knife, scalpel, whatever you want to call it, and they're going to cut it out of you and bring it to the surface of like, here it is, look at it, deal with it, and they're not probably going to care what your reaction is to that. They just want you to deal with it. Like, I know what it is, go deal with it, basically. Scorpio is the binding of two separate things. So this could be sex, marriage, binding contracts. What is the other one? It can also be like when you inherit money, because there's kind of like a binding contract, but there's also like that connection with someone who's passed on, like that connection with the dead. Yes. So Scorpio and Virgo, I was just reading about this. They used to be the same sign, and that's why their symbols look so similar. This is the symbol here. I always thought this arrow was supposed to be like a devil's tail. I'm just kidding. And Virgo's looks exactly like this, but the arrow is pointing inward. So it's supposed to be the same archetypal energy, but they're just manifesting differently. Virgo is like the selfless service to others. Scorpio is more that severance, I think, of separating yourself from everything and everyone so that you can go through a very difficult transformational experience. That's kind of what Scorpio is. So they used to be the same, and then Libra was inserted in between Virgo and Scorpio to be like the balancing point. And what happened basically is there was a split in feminine energy, and that's kind of where Juno, also known as Hera, comes in. Libra was put in the middle to literally be the balancing scales, but that split should have never happened, because those are really two parts of feminine energy. Virgo, in a way, is kind of like the giver, the nurturer in some ways, and Scorpio is like the death. So to me, it's very much like light and dark goddess energy, with Scorpio being the dark goddess for sure. And it's not that Scorpio is all bad or evil or anything like that, but Scorpio, and whatever placements you have in Scorpio, you're just going to see the dark goddess empowerment coming out through those points in your chart. Which would mean taking your power back, standing up for yourself, embodying your power, being a healer, being, almost like a psychic, being someone who just associates more with the darkness, which is seeing the truth, seeing whatever is lurking in the dark, in the subconscious, outside of like normal people's awareness, basically. Okay. Great. Are there any questions about that? Let me know. So I'm gonna do this again. So we're gonna look at the chart now. So again, have your chart handy, and I hate that. I don't know why, like, in this menu bar here, they have the news, and it always pops up on accident, and I try to avoid it as much as possible because it makes me sad. Okay. So this is the chart at the time of the new moon. New moons are when the sun and the moon are in the same sign and the sky is dark. So moving into that dark goddess energy again, it's definitely our subconscious, planting new seeds, starting new projects, blah, 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 but also working in our own psyches. And with Scorpio especially, it's like psychology, working through our trauma, embarking on a new healing path, for sure. And there is a lot of aspects here that point to that. I'm going to take away some of these aspects because there's just like way too much going on right now. Okay. The energy is dark right now, honestly. I felt very strange for days. Woo, yeah, Halloween was just very interesting. Still trying to recover from all of that energy download and just everything that happened. it's like nothing happened, but like everything happened, you know? It was all like in the spirit world, in the energy. It's not like anything like outside of myself happened. It was all like in here, in the spirit realms, things like that. And that seems like a shared experience too. Okay, so I'm looking at this triangle right here. Forgive me, I don't know what kind of triangle that is. But the important thing here is the apex of the triangle, which is pointing to Chiron. So let's just backtrack a little bit. The most important aspect we have on this new moon is that it is exactly opposing Uranus and Taurus. Like exactly. We have 12 degrees and 40 minutes of Scorpio, exactly opposite. The opposite sign would be Taurus, 12 degrees, 47 minutes of Taurus. This is a tough energy. These are two fixed signs. So while Scorpio is fixed emotions, Taurus is fixed values, what's important to them, what like their roots basically and their foundation, their opinions, especially with like Venus too being desire and likes and dislikes. So there's this opposition already going on, and it's a shocking opposition. So whatever realizations you have at this time, they might be very unexpected. You might have these like very spiritual revelations, aha moments. You might spontaneously, in the case of Uranus, spontaneously just achieve something spiritually, Scorpio, or emotionally, or psychologically, and it might just like happen. Or on the flip side, if it's not like a brilliant, like, aha, like rebirth, renewal, great realization, it's going to be the downfall of something that's just not working anymore. And Uranus in Taurus, of course, it's very foundational. It goes really, really deep. This is like the basis of what, you know, makes up like who you are, your family, where you come from. It's that deep. And it might even go into like ancestry even a little bit, like your family. It's just something like, I'm just picturing, of course, a plant, and it's just literally the roots that like reach the deepest. That's where the revelations could come from. So it could be like connecting dots perhaps, but also like creating new dots and seeing things in a different way. Just having like an opening in the mind, like a breakthrough, and just moving through that, through surrender, which would be Scorpio's like highest vibration, would be surrendering to the process, I think. So that's a really, really, really powerful opposition. And it's actually creating a T-square, as you can see here. So these red lines, so we have the sun and the moon, opposite Uranus, so like opposite like a tightrope, and then they're both pointing to Saturn in Aquarius. Oh my gosh. Like as soon as I saw that, I was like, this is going to be one heck of a new moon. Whatever we're changing now about our lives and ourselves, it's going to shift like everything around us. In the case of Saturn, it will materialize really, really quickly. So I think it's really important to have goals and dreams, which has been a message I've been getting a lot from the Morrigan, the goddess that I'm dedicated to, and also just other beings in the spirit world. They're like, you need to have goals and start working towards them. And I do think that that's important for everyone right now, especially now, because with this new moon, it's starting a huge cycle. So whatever you're focused on, just think about what your dream is. It's going to feel like conflict. So there's going to be things in your life where you feel like they're at odds with each other. And look in your chart and see where the Scorpio-Taurus axis is, and Aquarius, so you can get an idea of what two parts of your life you're trying to like work out. So just for example, in this chart, this is the first house here, which is the self, identity, doing things for yourself, learning about yourself for yourself, versus the seventh house, which would be relationships. So that would be like the tug of war if this was like a person's chart. So look at your chart, see where that axis is, and that will show you where those changes are taking place, where you're going to feel that push-pull energy. It's not bad, but you don't want to pick one or the other. Ideally, you want to harmonize both aspects of your life, and then you can kind of push out through Saturn and Aquarius and manifest that into society, into reality, into your life. That's the energy of this T-square, I think. So pushing out through Saturn and Aquarius, society, friends, structures. So literally restructuring your life, I think, and deciding what's really important to you. It might surprise you when you realize what actually is important to you, I think, on this new moon versus what isn't. It's going to be shocking, for sure. Okay. So we also have the sun and moon. Oh, we'll get to quintiles in a second. The sun and moon are also quincunx, the black moon Lilith down here. This is a very irritating, frustrating energy. It just doesn't feel good. It just feels very uncomfortable. It's like we don't really want to go to the dark place right now. I mean, I don't know what's going on, but usually I'm just like very accepting of like the seasonal changes. Like, okay, you know, summer's over and fall and like going into winter. But like right now, I'm like, I don't want winter to happen. I don't want to go there like at all. And it seems like some people that I've talked to as well, they feel that way too. So I don't know if it's like we just don't really want to go to the dark place right now. We don't want to deal with the trauma again, because at this point in the entire world, we're all very traumatized with everything that has happened. We just don't really want to go there. We don't want to do that like dark work right now. Or I'm just speaking for myself. But that is how I see that quincunx energy. And we also have Mars quincunxing the North Node. I don't know why that other quincunx isn't drawing in here, but this dotted green line here. So it's like we can't move forward until we deal with this stuff. Like you just have to. It's just like such a Scorpio energy. Like it's gonna be really hard and you gotta face things and you literally can't move forward until you face those things. And I think it's important that you do face the things that you don't want to face right now, because if you don't, that is what's going to continue to materialize into your future. So even if you don't want to look at those things, if they're still going to be there. So I think they'll just continue to like perpetuate this cycle and just keep going and going and going. And, you know, if you know anything about Scorpio energy, it's going to take us to like, it'll take it to the extreme basically. So whatever you don't want to look at, it's going to make it huge. Not really like in a Jupiter way, but just bring it to like the edge of human existence, to like the most extreme state, so that you can deal with that stuff. And Mercury is sextile Venus. Okay, here is Mercury. Where is Venus? Right here. So Mercury is at 28 degrees of Libra, and Venus is at 29 degrees of Sagittarius, nearing the end here. It'll go into Capricorn afterwards. Whenever a planet is at the last degrees of any sign, it takes the energy of that sign and reaches a energy of desperation and makes it very intense. So intense Sagittarius energy is like, if it's more of like in a dark place, it's more of like preachiness, like hanging on to our belief systems, like no matter what, don't want to hear anyone else's opinion, but like wants everyone to hear our opinion. And I'm just speaking from experience because I have a Sagittarius rising. And just getting so stuck in like your own vision that you don't really want to include other people's visions. Like that's the kind of stuff that will come up too. Okay, so we'll look at the Sceptiles, and so let's look at the magic aspects, and then we'll get into like the fun stuff. So look at your chart, see where Aquarius and Taurus and Scorpio are. I can't talk and do this at the same time. Okay. But then you also want to see if you have anything in Leo too, because, or especially around 12 degrees, anything in Leo will be very, very affected by this too. So these are all the quintiles and septiles, and then we have that one quincunx here. Quintiles are the energy of Venus. They're very beautiful, magical, very creative, very spiritually protective, because this is the 5-pointed star. The pink lines are septiles, the 7-pointed star. So very otherworldly, extraterrestrial, very alien-like, very strange, weird, chaotic, I would say. So we have a lot less septiles than we've been having in the weeks leading up to this point. It's mostly quintiles, which, being the energy of Venus, it's like we're taking all these spiritual lessons that we've been learning and we can actually ground them into reality now. Maybe making some art or just doing some magic. So it's kind of coming back down into reality, which is so important too, doing work in the spirit world, if you can't ground it back into your practical day-to-day life, like, what's the point? You know, I don't know. That's just how I feel anyway. So at this point, we're kind of working back into like the earth element. I'm just picturing like molding like clay or something and like actually making this useful to us, instead of getting like lost out there, which can happen too. White Moon Selene is also Sceptile Palace. I don't have White Moon. Oh no, I do. Why isn't this showing up? I must have like the orb at a strange number. So these are actually Sceptile. This is like being a courageous warrior. I think it's a reminder to us to face the darkness, face those things as a courageous warrior that you already are, and healing your wounds, because that will definitely light the way for others who are lost in the dark too. And we also have Mars, Sceptile Juno, Mars. Am I looking at this right? I don't know why it's not coming up here. We have Chiron, Sceptile, the North Node, Sceptile. So we do have quite a bit of Sceptiles. I do think that there still are openings, I would say, in the spirit world so that downloads could get in. And it's going to be some really harsh stuff because of Saturn's placement here. We also have Neptune, which is actually going to go direct towards the end of November. What day is that? So Neptune will start to slow down significantly as we move through the month. And that is the planet of spirituality. So it's actually December 1st, depending on where you are. Spirituality, esoteric mysteries, psychic visions, dreams, stuff like that. So that's kind of something that we're moving into. Whatever we realize now is so important for the future. And there's also these quintile triangles here. I don't think there's a word for them. So these quintile, these yellow triangles, again, pointing towards Mercury. Really pay attention to your thoughts and what you're thinking. Again, it's going to materialize. It's going to manifest. And it's going to determine where you go from here. But it's more than just like manifestation power. Like, it's more than that. It's like you're really choosing your destiny, and we're kind of coming back to what the theme of this whole thing is. You're choosing your destiny. You're choosing what fate you're going to go down, you know, what path you are going to choose. And it's tied so deep. It's almost like we're altering like our karma. We're altering the karmic family lines that we come from. Like, it's that important right now. And I think that we reincarnated at this time for a reason, so that we could do that work for our family line. And that's kind of where Uranus and Taurus comes back in. So that we could do that work that our ancestors literally couldn't do. Okay. So let's come back here. Okay, so now that you have an idea of how this is going to work out, we're going to get into what this new moon is aligned with constellation-wise. And this is super, super interesting, and I had so much fun researching this stuff. And it didn't even happen on purpose. It just, I was seeing things in the spirit world. Okay, the sun is moving through my 12th house right now. Oh my gosh, so this new moon is going to be something. So I've just been seeing things in the spirit world, and I was like, I don't know what the heck that means, but somehow it all tied into what constellations we're looking at too. So I'm going to come back to the slides. And if this is all too much, you can always come back to the video too. You don't have to watch the whole thing if you don't want to. Okay, yay! So this new moon is aligned perfectly with Corona Borealis, which is also known as the Northern Crown constellation. So if you remember from a few lives ago when I did a lot of information on the Crux constellation, the Cross constellation, which this new moon is also aligned with that. They're very far away, but they're at the same degree. If you look like at the map, they're not exactly right next to each other, but they are. But this new moon is aligned with both. This is another one of those constellations that has like a lot of lore, a lot of history, a lot of the big cultures that we talk about. Sumeria, for example, they really had a thing with this constellation. It has power for sure, and you can just see that like all across the board, all across different spiritual circles, belief systems, blah blah blah. Okay, so the Corona Borealis constellation, it has two main sequence stars, Alphecca A. Oh, I'm saying that right. I didn't look up how to say it. It looks like Alphecca. A is a white sequence star. It's 74 times brighter than our sun. It is enveloped by a circumstellar disk of dust because of its fast rotational velocity. So literally, this star is moving so fast, Alphecca A, that there's debris flying off of it, which also Vega is like that too. So it's moving very, very fast. It's very, very bright. And there is a secondary star as well that is not as bright. It's called Alphecca B. It's a yellow main sequence star. It's the same temperature as our sun about, but it's much smaller and just moves more slowly. And because there are two stars together, I just think that there is this energy of duality for sure, the light and the dark. That can be with anything, but I always just think of duality whenever there's like a star that looks like one star, but it's actually two different ones. Okay, so this is what it looks like basically in the sky. The Serpens constellation, if you look at the drawings, the head of the serpent is literally like pointing right towards this star in particular. And this is the star that the new moon is connected to. And there's so many like stories, so much lore. We'll just talk about some of it. Okay, so Alphecca, the jewel in the crown. There's a lot of different names for this constellation. So one of them is Alphecca Gemma. Gemma actually means jewel in Latin, so jewel of the crown. There are also Nocia is another term for this star, and Astaroth, which is related to the goddess Astarte, which is Ishtar. I'm just going to assume that every live we do from here on out is going to include Ishtar because literally it all comes back to Ishtar. It's so interesting. And the owls will be important again too. Astarte was kind of like a much later version of Ishtar. It was Inanna, and then it was Ishtar, and then it was Astarte, and then it was Aphrodite, and then it was Venus, and there were some others in there too, but the lineage really comes from Inanna and Ishtar, which is an ancient Sumerian goddess, which is basically Venus. So love, war, desire, things like that. When I started doing research on one of the names, which is Astaroth, I thought it was interesting because the first thing I came up with was like this demon. I'm not even kidding you. Like, of course, there always has to be like an inverted something for everything. But the first thing I came across was literally this demon called Astaroth. So I didn't really delve too much into this just because I'm feeling so spiritually sensitive. I didn't want to read about demons for too long. But there is supposedly a demon named Astaroth, which Astaroth is what they used to refer to Astarte, the goddess, as. So they say that Astaroth, along with Lucifer and Beelzebub, were like the trinity of hell or whatever. When I was reading about this, I'm just like, man, this sounds like so made up, honestly. It sounds like they just took the name Astarte and they're like, you know, like the big religions were just like, this isn't actually the devil. I'm not denying that it exists. But yeah, that's the first thing I found. And then this is supposedly the sigil from an anonymous grimoire. It's called the Lesser Key of Solomon. It has the 5-pointed star, which is the star of Venus, which is, you know, Astarte. I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. The Lesser Key of Solomon, they don't know who wrote that. There is some evidence that whoever wrote it just like took from this other book that was available at the time that person had channeled. So, I don't know. Whatever, that's just that. And there's also these symbols for this fixed star because it's considered to be one of the Bohemian stars, the fixed stars. So, those are considered to have magical properties. Again, that's just like a theory that these certain stars, it probably has ancient Sumerian ties, but how that ties in has been lost. You know, it's lost. It's definitely in that library in the bottom of the Vatican, probably. But Alphecca, basically, there was a manuscript from the medieval times that was written by someone named Hermes and about the fixed stars. So that's where these sigils are from. I've definitely seen these sigils quite a few times. I actually have these tiger's eye, like obelisks that somebody got me, and it has like sigils that look very similar to this for the archangels. I don't know how I feel about it. Like, I think there is power to sigils, but at the same time, when I'm looking at some of the Bohemian fixed stars, there's 15 of them. When I'm looking at those sigils, I just don't really feel anything, or just feel kind of like not great about it. I don't know. Yes, and there's also this other theory I just want to show you really quick. I found this website, In Spiral Nexus, and I actually have seen this around the internet. I don't know if it's true. If you want to go down this rabbit hole, I just wanted to put it here. There is like a theory that here are all the Bohemian fixed stars, and here are their sigils. So there's a theory, this is like the Hebrew tree of life. There's a theory that basically the symbols were made by connecting certain parts of the tree of life. I don't know. I've never done research into this. It just seems very overwhelming. I have seen this in meditations, and I understand that like it's a path to enlightenment. And I believe people like Aleister Crowley or people like on that darker path, they also reach enlightenment, but they invert it and go like down, like into the like the shadows, and that's how they reach enlightenment. And there's like a theory that you can reach enlightenment both ways, like good and bad, light and dark, like you can get there either way. Anyway, that's just like a whole thing. You can look up that stuff if you want to. Like I said, I don't really know that much about this, to be honest. And also, this is the constellation we're talking about right here. That's the crown. And then here's another picture. Yeah, so here's Hercules. And like I said, this serpent, the head is facing right towards it. And one of the websites I was on was talking about how the Corona Borealis constellation, it rules the lower spine. And actually that makes a whole lot of sense, because if you think about the snake and Kundalini energy, it, theoretically starts at the base of the spine and like circles its way up through the chakras. So I don't know if that's why. That's just kind of what I thought when I was reading about this. Okay, so now we get to Aryana Rod. I am so sorry if I'm pronouncing that right. I was looking at pronunciations and found like 10 different ones. So I'm just going to say it how it looks. That might be very irritating to some people who are very into Welsh mythology, and I'm very sorry. Aryana Rod, okay, so she is a goddess of the ever-turning wheel of the year. She is literally the weaver of destiny. She is a very, very, very powerful goddess. She's associated with the moon. She's associated with creation. I'm trying to find my notes. Okay, so in Welsh, Arian means silver and Rod means wheel. So she is literally the goddess of the silver wheel, the wheel of the year. I love this art. This is so beautiful. And she, in Welsh mythology, is associated with this constellation. Yeah, super cool. So she's also associated with reincarnation, the full moon, weaving creation, kingship. She's kind of like a sovereignty goddess a bit. Reminds me of the Morrigan and other warrior goddesses, basically in ancient Ireland, and I'm guessing also in ancient Scotland. There was a whole ritual that took place where whoever was king would marry one of the sovereignty goddesses, and that was how he maintained his power, was basically being in right relationship, in the case of Ireland, with the other world. So as I was reading about her mythology, it sounds very similar. Of course, she had like a very traumatic story. Like, I swear to God, like mythology, when it has anything to do with women or goddesses, it's always just very violent, it seems, and very traumatic. Not with the Morrigan, actually. Well, if it is, it's like her. The Morrigan is probably like attacking or killing someone, or like, throwing handfuls of blood and stuff. But usually, especially with like Greek mythology, it's very dark. So Okay, so I was doing research. Jamie, this is her Instagram handle right here. She sent me a bunch of books that she had about different Celtic and Welsh mythology. So thank you very much for doing that. There's a lot of interesting information on the internet. A lot of it is not true. So I'll just read this together. Any goddess whose imagery could possibly link her to lost Celtic creation myths is also likely to be a mother aspect. Two examples of these are Ireland's Iman, who could spin webs to entrap marauding enemies, and Wales' Aryana Rod, who is sometimes depicted as a weaver. In other cultures, goddesses who are weavers, spinners, or otherwise make cloth are often tied to that culture's creation myths. So I thought that was really interesting. This is like my favorite, like one of my favorite paintings ever, Light Work by Autumn Sky. I just love this picture so much. So Aryana Rod is related to creation, the silver wheel. So where does the idea of like the wheel of the year come from? Now, if you think about ancient cultures, really the first spiritual experience they had was just looking up at the sky and like being mesmerized. And if you don't understand too much about astronomy yet, all you see is like the sky circling, right? Like a wheel. So that's where that whole thing comes from too. And it reminded me of this tarot card, the Wheel of Fortune. So funny story, one of my tarot cards had fallen out of the deck. I don't know how long it's been down here. So I picked it up off the floor right before this live, and it's the Wheel of Fortune. And what's interesting about this card, these are supposed to be the 4 cardinal directions. So here's Taurus, Leo, so these are the fixed signs. I believe the bird is supposed to be Scorpio. I don't know why this bird in particular. And then the cherub is supposed to be Aquarius. So the 4 directions, the wheel, this is like the devil, I guess. And here's a serpent, which kind of reminds me of like Genesis, and like the Adam and Eve story, and like Inanna and the Halupu tree. I forgot to look up what the pharaoh is supposed to mean. The first thing I just thought of is just like, again, kingship. I just feel like it's all connected. You know what I mean? In tarot, this card is supposed to represent destiny, fate. What goes up must come down, and what goes down must eventually come back up again. That's just like the circle of life, the wheel of life. So things don't last forever. It's always constantly in motion. So I do think that card is probably based on this whole thing, like the creation myth, and also these like ancient myths about goddesses in particular who are weavers and spinners, who are basically like literally weaving reality. Because of course before like Christianity and everything, it was always a goddess who created the universe. It was very rarely like a god or like a male figure who created the universe. It was like almost always a female, actually, like especially with like Ishtar, and it's all coming together. But yeah, Autumn Sky, look up her art. It's just so good. And I don't know if I've talked about it before, but the reason I chose the name Dreamweaver, I didn't choose it at all, actually. I was at a sound healing with my mom, and I don't know where I had heard it at that point, but someone had told me, like, yeah, everyone's spirit has, like, a spirit name. So I went into this sound healing. I was like, okay, my intention for this sound healing is to know what my spirit name is. And I thought it would take like the full however long like the sound healing was, and like the second I closed my eyes, I just heard Dreamweaver, like a literal like disembodied voice like yelling it in my head, and I was just like, I don't know, it just makes sense to me, like it resonates with me, but I had never actually come up with it myself, so I was actually kind of excited to read all of this myth. So let me make sure I got everything. Oh, and also, Aryana Rod, she's also associated with the dead. So basically, in the lore, she was in the sky with, like, her celestial counterparts. So they were females. They were all women. So there was supposedly 9 of them in some of the myths, but I think that number varies. So she existed in the sky at the Corona Borealis. Corona means crown again. I don't know if I said that. Corona does mean crown. So she existed in the sky, and she would decide where the dead would go with, like, I think there was 9 of them all together, actually. So they were like kind of the judges when people would die, and it was them who would decide what would happen to them. So there's like this life and death thing here, right? The light goddess and the dark goddess, the creator and the destroyer, that's two parts of the same thing. And it's making me think again of like Virgo, which problem solves and does acts of service and nurtures things to life, while Scorpio is like the dark goddess, which kills things and destroys things. And again, those two things go together too. Okay. Oh yeah, it's right there. Okay. So Aryana Rod lived in the stellar realm with her female attendants. So some sources say 9 in all, and it was there she decided the fate of the dead. So she is literally the celestial weaver of creation. Now this is all from this website. We will check that out in a second. It's a really great article. So Aryana Rod's wheel spins the cosmos, weaving the silver threads of the stars and galaxies, and therefore time, the seasons, and fate. She controls the maelstrom of creative forces at the heart of the cosmos. The spinning goddesses of fate are often associated with the spinning of the zodiac wheel in the sky, therefore tying them to destiny and the weaving of all creation and time itself. Yeah, such a beautiful article. And again, Aryan means silver and Rod means wheel. So wheels indicate the passing of time, cycles, and seasons. And like I was saying earlier, kingship, sovereignty, receiving arms, that has a lot to do with Aryana Rod as well. Yeah, so her story is like a little bit traumatic, I would say. Okay, we'll come back to this. I want to show you that article I was talking about. Oh, I don't know. I can hear my cat crying up there right now. Oh, it's probably here. Here we go. So this blog was very, very beautiful. I did try to double check all the information I got from here just because it is WordPress. But she wrote a really beautiful poem that I wanted to read about Aryana Rod, the goddess. Okay. Aryana Rod, great cosmic mother, you create from yourself alone, spinning the stars upon your silver wheel, spiral goddess of the whirling galaxies, weaving your web from the threads of time, all that is, all that was, and all that shall be, endlessly becoming, spinning life into being. You are the sacred strand in all things, weaver of wisdom, weave us closer to you. It's just such a beautiful, beautiful poem. There's no reason for that except for it just kind of gave me at least like a better idea of what she's about. You know, she is very relevant for this new moon. So like, how does this relate to you? You know, working with this goddess can kind of help you understand the threads of life. So how things that you've been through, how they fit together, how they make sense, because it can definitely seem in our human judgmental minds of like, this is good, this is bad. It's sometimes hard to see how everything that we went through, it all weaves together into this beautiful cosmic web, and everything happens for a reason. And we also do have control over our own lives. And that's a really big message of Aryana Rod, that no matter what happens to us, we are the ones in control, and we really do get to weave our own destiny. And it doesn't mean that everything that happens to you is your fault or like you had any control over that, but in the end, like, we get to decide what to do with our fate. So it's like a great paradox. Like, we don't have control, but we also are the ones in control. You know what I mean? Like, we're the artists, like, we are the creators of this reality, of this dream. And I really do believe that. That's like a very shamanic way to view this reality, is that we are the ones creating it in our own consciousness. And I do personally believe that. Just for example, I know if I'm in a bad mood, everything around me seems bad. And it's not that it is, I'm just seeing it that way. And it's almost like the patterns expand in that way too. Okay, so let me get a sip of coffee here in my giant mug. All right, So one of the last things I wanted to talk about was the asteroid Persephone 399 is exactly conjunct Black Moon Lilith. Literally 0 degree and 0 minute orb. Now, I've been doing this a while, and I don't think that I can remember ever a time when there was an alignment for a new moon or full moon that was at 0 degrees and 0 minutes. At least not one that like matters to me. So this is like really important. Persephone, the goddess of the underworld, conjunct Black Moon Lilith, which is like the calculated dark goddess point. This is really powerful. We have to go to the dark place. We're going to the dark forest. Themes of this aspect could be oppression, sovereignty, death and rebirth, power and control, sacred sexuality, and in the case of Aryana Rod, sacred sexual rights possibly too. And also the trauma self and the shadow self. So we're going there. See how it all kind of like weaves together? Aha, it all ties together. Other aspects, the Uranian planet Hades is trine the sun and the moon. Hades is the god of the underworld. And it's also squaring Chiron. And then finally, the asteroid Demeter in Cancer is squaring Mercury, quintile Uranus, trine Neptune, and opposite Pluto. So Cancer energy is relevant here. Again, family, there's something with like family ties, like especially with like weaving, and this is like goddess energy, so I'm seeing like the females in families like weaving the web of like the family line and the ancestry. And sometimes those lines get damaged. Sometimes they need to be reworked, and sometimes threads just need to be taken out and start over. And I think that we all have that power right now to literally change the lineage, to change like human history. I know that sounds very like grandiose, but there's like this power we have right now to like reach within the timelines. And it's not like a straight line. Like I was kind of getting this message from the Morrigan recently. It was like when we choose something now, we create this line of like all the other times we also choose that in other lifetimes, and they all create like one thread, like one point that comes together. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like it makes sense to me when she said it, but I don't know if that helps you at all. This is a poem by Nikita Gill, or an excerpt anyway. I asked Persephone, how could you grow to love him? He took you from flowers to a kingdom where not a single living thing can grow. Persephone smiled. My darling, every flower on your earth withers. What Hades gave me was a crown made for the immortal flowers in my bones. Very cool. All right. All right, so no more slides and no more information. Just kidding. Okay. So like I was saying, I just want to talk about this again as like, I just want to make sure it's okay to talk about it. Okay, so basically what I had asked the Morrigan was, is this our first lifetime working together? And she said, basically, like, as I had chosen to work with her in this lifetime, she was showing me different timelines, like here's our reality. She was showing me different timelines like stacked on top of each other, and she was saying like as you choose it in this one, because time isn't linear, you also choose it in the other ones, which now that I'm talking about it, it's kind of blowing my mind, because it's almost like what we choose right now in this lifetime, it's literally affecting the whole cosmic web. It's affecting all of our lifetimes, past, present, future. Yeah, that's like really tripping me out right now. So whatever we do here and now, we might think that it's like, okay, one lifetime, okay, the next lifetime, and then the next. It can definitely seem that way because of how we perceive things, but we're actually changing and affecting like all these other timelines and all these lifetimes at the same time. So when we choose something here and now, we choose it in all the other timelines too. So you gotta watch what you do, because, you know, if you're out here like, I don't know, just backstabbing people or whatever, you're going to choose that in every single timeline. And not only just affecting you, it's like everything that we do affects like the whole like pool of humanity, the whole cosmic web. All right, so last thing, let's pull some cards. I think that is pretty much all I wanted to say. There's always like so much more that I write down, but I think an hour is like the longest it should possibly be. Okay. Just asking, what we need to hear for this new moon. Interesting. There's no right or wrong way to read cards also. Okay. So the bottom of the deck, which I always think is relevant, 3 of Cups, again, not the card I expected. I see this as connecting with, like, the people who are closest to you, like your very best friends, and, like, celebrating something, celebrating life, or some kind of, like, reunion with people that you're close to. Now, in the past, I pulled the 10 of Swords reversed and the Knight of Pentacles. So this guy, has been stabbed in the back way too many times. He's just defeated, but reversed, the swords like fall out and healing can begin. And then the Knight of Pentacles. So, wanting to start something new in the recent past, maybe you started a new project or something that you're trying to manifest into reality, but like it's in its baby stages is how I feel. Like it's just the beginning. It might not feel like it because it's taking a lot of work to do whatever you're doing, but it's still like in the very, very beginning stages. Because in the present, I pulled the 7 of Pentacles, Earth. So this guy's working hard, and it's almost like you're working, and what is the point? Because you're not seeing the results that you want. This is always like, to me, when I've been doing readings since forever, basically since I was like 15. Whenever I see this card, it's like the universe, your guides, whatever, telling you don't give up. Don't throw in the towel. Keep working. Don't stop. Keep working towards something because it's going to manifest. You might have to tweak your vision quite a bit because I have the 6 of Cups reversed, which is like nostalgia, kind of, karma, and also the Page of Wands in like the far future. You might have to tweak your vision a little bit, but don't stop working. Even if what you're working towards doesn't end up like being the thing that you want it to be, that's okay. You're probably going to have to expand your vision later. Or Page of Wands, you might get a new idea or something. Man, my hair is just wild lately. Or something is going to be offered to you that you can start anew, like a creative pursuit or traveling or something. I just vision. I just feel like this is vision. I'm getting ringing in my ears too. So this is like expanding your vision. You're probably going to end up looking at things in a different way, but this work will lead you to somewhere. And it's going to feel really uncomfortable, I think, because in general, the 6 of Cups is like nostalgia, which isn't always a good thing. Like if you grew up like in a chaotic household, then chaos is nostalgic to you. Like that's what you're comfortable with. So it might be really uncomfortable to work towards whatever you're working towards right now, but just keep going. Don't stop. You can't. And like celebrate your successes too, preferably with like your best friends or people that you're close to. Don't forget to do that. Because if you don't celebrate the little things, it definitely can start to feel meaningless like really fast. The Mask. The River with a horse. And the One. The Mask, the River, and the One. The Mask, the River, and the One. So those are all things. I don't know what the One means. Let's look up that one. The Mask, the River, and the One. So because this looks like the river looks like a reflective surface, I see this as people are going to reflect to you things that you don't want to face within yourself right now, but that doesn't mean it is you. Before I even find the page, the One, I just feel that, again, it's coming back to like the cosmic mother, like everything is one. It's not just our reality we're weaving, we're also weaving everyone else's reality. So like what you decide and focus on right now is really, really important. Okay, so basically what it's saying is that the archetype, because this is the archetype deck for the Wild Unknown, the archetype of oneness, it's kind of hard to experience because we only really experience it in moments. That's interesting. So it kind of reminds me of time. Kairos. Kairos is like that aligned moment when like you just have that moment of stillness and you know that like you are exactly where you need to be, and no matter what you choose moving forward, it's gonna get you to where you need to be. That's kind of like what Kairos is, and that's what reminds me of this too. We are neither important nor unimportant. All duality fades away, and we are left with what is, the precious knowing that life is a gift, and we are both the giver and the receiver of this fortune. It is said that Om is the primordial sound of the universe, and that all other mantras are born from it. Simply imagining this possibility will activate the one. That's really interesting, and I feel that that like roots this whole live down, like in the one, like we are one within ourselves, within the cosmos, within this web that we are all weaving together. It is true, like I just feel in my mind, in my Virgo personality, everything, you know, I'm always trying to separate things, like separate it and judge it, the Libra in me. And the ego does that too. We always think that we're separate and that we're not all together in this together, but we are. So the wheel, the one. All right. So that's all I've got to say. I think tonight it's going to be a great new moon. I'm super excited. Let me know what houses this is happening in for you and what that means to you also. I feel that I need more, like, to hear your guys' input with your own charts and, like, what you feel that means. Because I would love to, like, just bounce ideas with you and kind of, like, feed off of each other and expand, like, our astrology practice if you want. Okay. All right. I hope everyone has a wonderful new moon.